I'm Janesse Burnett.
I'm Sarah Rogers. And this is the Houston View.
Hi, I'm Janesse Burnett, and I want to personally thank you all for tuning in to our second show. And I also want to introduce my co-host, Sarah Rogers.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Although I have to say you looked a little rattled when you got here.
Could you tell? Okay, so on our way up here, I was just a little late, just a tad bit. So I'm driving, faster than normal. Not too fast, but just a tad bit fast.
Right.
So I don't know if you know this, my car is so little. It's so tiny. So I look in my rear view and I see this huge Charger and I'm like, okay, is he going to slow down? Needless to say, the next thing I knew, it was on my butt, like on my bumper. And I'm like, if you want to, get past me, just get past me. So it revs its engine and it gets on the side of me. So I'm like, okay, you want to be petty. So I look and I just give a smile, genuine smile, like it's okay, no hard feelings. And he flicked me off.
Really?
Yeah, like I'm being nice to you and you're giving me the bird. So like, do I have to worry about like going into a business and having them flick me off because I want to smile and be nice?
Well, I'll tell you where you have to worry about getting flipped off for a smile. Starbucks.
No, you just get arrested.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to touch that one, but didn't they just have some sort of nationwide sensitivity training a few days ago? I think we have some footage from that training, do we? We do. Okay, great. Perfect. So this is the training from one of those stores.
Boycott. All right. We desire to treat everyone equally, so let's start off with a little quizzing. Let's say a black man walks up to order a coffee. What do, Todd?
Take his order.
Take his order? Rule number 1, never assume someone's gender. Never.
But you said he was a black man.
Yeah, I know he's a guy because I already asked him his pronoun before I called him a him. You gotta be one step ahead. That's what this takes, Todd. That's what this takes. I need that. Because we gotta go one step higher with our sensitivity training, everybody. Take it one step up. Y'all need to get woke. Dale, help me out here. What do you say?
Before I take your order, I would like to apologize on behalf of my white ancestors.
I don't see anything wrong with that. That was good. Guys, the whole point is we need to stop accidentally being racist, okay?
How?
I don't know! I can't.
Okay, so that was the sensitivity training that Starbucks gave them.
Yes, it was.
That won't be sending anybody to jail anytime soon. Not with training like that. Like, that was hilarious. I needed that laugh. Okay, time to get serious. Last week we had State Attorney Marquise Bryant on the show with us to kind of go over the Crystal Mason case. For those of you who are not familiar with Crystal Mason, she was arrested for illegal voting in the 2016 presidential election. She served 3 years in jail because of that. Marquise explained the habitual offender felony law and how it was applied in order to get her the 5-year sentence. I think a lot of people were almost stunned that she received 5 years for voting. I don't think most people realize that illegal voting carries a second-degree felony penalty. He also spoke a little about the Krishonda Williams case. Krishonda Williams was a 911 Houston operator who was allegedly hanging up on thousands, and I mean thousands, of 911 emergency callers. She was actually only sentenced to 10 days in jail. Now, she does have other cases pending, and she could possibly face more jail time with each case.
Exciting stuff. Any updates on either of those cases?
Yes, in fact, there is. Crystal Mason filed a motion for a new trial, and the judge is set to rule on it on June 11th.
That's a very tough case. My heart really goes out to her and her family.
Very tough case. I pray that everything works out for her. Let's take a break.
Imagine sending your son or daughter to school every day. As a parent, you trust the school is going to do everything in its power to keep your child out of harm's way. Now, imagine you learned there was a big bully at your child's school. How would you feel? Would you want to stay at the school to protect your child? Would you want to pull your child out of school to protect them at home? Would you want the school district to do everything in their power to protect your child? Now, what if you learned that the big bully wasn't a child at your kid's school, but what if the bully was a superintendent of your child's district?
What? The superintendent? Is he bullying the teachers, the students? Like, what's going on?
No, he's not bullying students or teachers or parents.
You never know these days. Actually, a few weeks ago, a superintendent up in New Jersey was caught taking a dump, yes, a dump, on the school's football field. Do we have that footage? We do? Okay, let's play that for the audience.
A mystery pooper at a New Jersey high school turns out to be a school district superintendent. 42-year-old Thomas Tramaglini is charged with defecating in public, lewdness, and littering. Police say human feces had recently been found on a daily basis on or near the high school's track and football field. Surveillance cameras catching Tramaglini in the act.
You see, after this, nothing would surprise me. If you would have told me the superintendent was bullying the kids, I would have believed you. So what's going on with this particular superintendent?
Well, the former superintendent of Katy ISD was accused of being a big bully in middle school and high school by a former classmate of his.
So to be clear, he's not being accused of bullying anyone right now, but in middle school.
That's correct. Greg Barrett, a former middle school and high school classmate of the superintendent, made the accusations on March 19th, 2018 board meeting. So let's pull up the board meeting.
My name is Greg Barrett. I graduated from KSD in 1983. I started in 1975 with Mr. Lance. My legal name is Greg Gay. I was bullied. I had nobody to turn to. One day at lunch, I had my head shoved in the urinal where it busted my lip. I had laid on the ground in a fetal position as the kids kicked me. I got up, I rinsed my face off, I walked out of the lunchroom, walked straight to the principal's office, and he told me, these kids will grow up someday. They won't always be like this. But yet, here I am, covered in urine from laying on the ground underneath the urinal. My lip was busted, and they sent me home. Is that the way this is going to be? Lance, you were the one that shoved my head in the urinal. Thank you.
Tell you what. This is unbelievable.
Wow. So this man alleges that the Katy ISD superintendent shoved his head in a urinal when they were in middle school. What is this, like 20-odd years ago? Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure what to do with that information. Like, did he want the super to get fired? An apology? What exactly did he want to come of this?
Good points. Greg says his intention was not that the superintendent be fired, but he just simply wanted an apology. You have to think this guy was obviously traumatized and may have had to endure years of therapy. So now he has this opportunity to face his tormentor, and that's huge.
Yeah, you're right. Do we know how truthful these allegations are?
In fact, we have pretty strong indication that the allegations are true. A judge has come forward alleging that he remembered Lance Hint, the former superintendent, and he said that he was a really big bully as well when the two were in middle and high school.
Wow.
So take a look.
And now another classmate of Katy ISD Superintendent Lance Hint is saying that Hint was once a brutal bully.
It's an allegation that may hold extra weight because it comes from a sitting criminal court judge.
He was a vicious bully. He was a thug. He was a wealthy thug, but he was a thug.
Judge David Carpenter presides over a criminal court in the state of Alabama. Back in 1982, he attended Taylor High School with Lance Hint and says he avoided being his victim, but bore witness to the football star's predatory behavior.
Physically threatening some of my teammates, just menacing them, standing over them, and eventually started throwing weight plates at them, 25-pound weight plates at them.
Carpenter says the bullying of weaker classmates by Hint was frightening, intense, and near constant.
He liked to brag about beating up other people, and at one point he even bragged about beating up a police officer.
After reading Hint's public denial, Judge Carpenter felt compelled to speak out, saying he's in the business of justice and truth.
I thought he might be in prison somewhere based on the way he behaved when we were in high school.
So it's pretty safe to say it's highly unlikely that a sitting judge would jeopardize his reputation and his career to perpetuate a lie. Wow.
I agree with you there, and there's more to the story. In early May of this year, a Katy ISD watchdog parent came forward and suggested that Lance Hint plagiarized his PhD dissertation while at the University of Houston. What's interesting is the Rice University professor says there's no clear evidence of this type of plagiarism that warrants revoking his dissertation. But if he had been caught when they actually wrote the paper, wouldn't they have denied him the PhD? It's also interesting to note that the superintendent resigned days after the story broke. He says he resigned to protect his family from the brutal attacks, but one can only speculate as to what extent the plagiarism led to his decision to resign.
Before we go any further, I just want to let it be known that our intent is not to perpetuate any rumors or any lies being spread. Our intent is to solely inform the public on any and all events in and around the Houston area. With that being said, our deepest apologies, our deepest condolences go out to the Katy ISD kids and students and employees who are affected by these harsh rumors. We hope that the worst has come to pass and they can move on and get better and move past it. Although the accusations of the superintendent received most of the spotlight, let's not ignore the true issue and the true problem. That same watchdog parent had previously addressed issues of his own concerning his own son facing bullying in a Katy ISD school. Let's watch.
Thank y'all. My name is Sean Dolan. I'm an alumni of Galbo Elementary, McDonald Junior High, and May Creek High School. I currently have children in elementary, junior high, and high school. My son's assault on the bus was caught on video over a year ago, and despite my multiple requests to press charges, the attacker remained on his bus the remainder of the year. When my son's iPhone was stolen out of his bag, SIM card chewed up and thrown away, the thief was caught and placed not only back in my son's class, but she was put at my son's very table, where she retaliated and bullied him until we intervened. How many children in your schools are treated like my son and don't have parents to stand up for them? I fear the worst, especially with the added difficulties Harvey thrust upon our students and families. I want the board to know that I consider your inaction on this matter complicit if tragedy ever strikes KISD.
For reasons unknown, what started as a cry for help for the victims of bullying turned into a vicious battle between adults. In regards to the superintendent, I don't think that the citizens of Katy are really concerned about what happened 30 years ago. I think they're more so concerned with how his views on bullying and his policy making is going to affect the current students of Katy ISD.
Yeah, you make a great point, Janess. To get a little insight on the superintendent's stance on bullying, let's take a look at an interview that he did back in 2016.
In my experiences with bullying, there's usually two sides to a story, and until you get both sides of the story, you can't really determine fact or fiction on a bullying situation.
See, when I look at that, I don't see a man that's ready to take any type of tough stance on bullying. But now it's time to put that issue behind us and address the real issue, just how big of a problem that bullying is in today's schools and what can be done by families to address it. On the surface, it's pretty easy to spot a bully. But the reality of the situation is bullying is hard to spot and even harder to stop. A simple Google or YouTube search will provide thousands of results, from comedy skits to serious authors suggesting methods such as golden rules to bullying. Do any of these methods work? I don't know. What we do know is bullying is a huge problem in America, so much so that the U.S. government has sponsored a website called stopbullying.gov. To help us better understand the issue of bullying at the family level, we have Mr. and Mrs. Micheal Black. Welcome back. For those of you who are just tuning in, we are with co-founders of Self Ministries based here in Houston, Mr. and Mrs. Micheal and Adrienne Black. Thank you all for coming. Mrs. Black, please just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your roles in the company.
Okay, my name is Adrienne Black. This is my wonderful husband, Micheal Black. I am a co-founder, as you have said before. I also have an active role within the ministry. Okay. One of the main things that I do is deal with the annual marriage conference.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we have a couples conference. It includes unmarried people who are interested in potentially finding a mate, or they may be headed down the aisle of marriage.
Cool. Okay, and Mr. Black, you're not getting off that easy. Please explain to us also your role in the company.
Well, I think that primarily what I do is I'm the executive director of the actual ministry part, because it's broke up into a board in terms of raising resources, because it is a nonprofit. And so therefore, what I do on the ministry side, the actual work itself, is work with a team of people developing opportunities to be able to reach out to families and couples to provide them with resources and tools that are essential to having healthy and meaningful relationships and raising their families in whatever context or form that we find that in ways that will allow for people to become more fruitful and productive.
Okay, cool. So just in a few brief words, please explain to us in the audience the work that you do with the families.
I think that there's probably at least a couple of things. Number one is that we make an attempt to allow for them to understand that we are a Christian-based ministry, which means that we're going to present information that will be useful, that's related to biblical scripture. That way it becomes an objective source of information and allows for people who are both part of the faith family or not to be able to make application to their lives. Secondly, what we do with that, we also provide counseling, premarital counseling for those who are married, those who are going to be married. We also provide what I would call intervention, which means simply people that have arrived at impasses and they need to have assistance and encouragement to be able to navigate through those places and to bring about resolution and also restoration and in some cases even renewal as it relates to their relationship.
I think that's important too, to kind of have like an outside party really being open and honest about what they're seeing. That's very important. So based on y'all experiences dealing with families, do you all think that bullying is, I guess, as problematic as it seems? The issue of bullying?
Frankly, I would probably say that it's probably more problematic than it is stating the word problematic. I think that there's a lot of relaxing as it relates to what takes place in the context of our society, and the society impacts the various institutions that children and adults pass through. And with that being the case, most people are not necessarily that sensitive to the potential of bullying and what kind of forms that takes place with it. And I would think that in some cases, the very seed work of it really takes place in the home of one's family.
True. Very true, very true. So if a family came to you all expressing concern that their son or daughter was being bullied, how would you go about helping that parent?
First thing that it's extremely important is that you have an open relationship with your children, because you have to have they have to not be afraid to come to you and explain what is going on, and sometimes it has to be in detail. So open communication with your child is extremely important. Also, it's important that you not judge what has going on, because sometimes the child is involved in it just as much as the other offender, and so you have to get to the bottom of what it is. One of the things that's important also is you really need to look deeply into your own child as to what's causing their self-esteem to be affected by what's being heard or what's happening. Now, if it's verbal, then it could be a self-esteem, but if it's physical, then you have a different situation. And then you have the issue of the cyberbullying. And so you've got all three, and you have to kind of narrow down, is it all of them happening or what's going on? And so as a parent, that open communication is extremely important, and really getting to know, really, is there more to this than just what they're saying?
And I think that's so important. I hate to say this, but especially in the Black community, sometimes children are not made to feel comfortable to approach their parents with issues like that. It's kind of just swept under the rug. So I am glad that y'all are here, because these are important topics that we do need to discuss.
Can I say one other thing before you move on? You know, I think that what becomes important in trying to deal with really deficiency, I think that it's important that parents not take sides. I think it's important to be objective, because when you are objective, then a lot of times what becomes obvious may not be seen. There might be something that's far more deeper than that. And if you're attached emotionally in the way that it prevents you from actually hearing or observing what's taking place, then you sort of prolong the actual dealing with the issue, trying to come to terms in terms of how can we handle and address this, and then being of support in a way that allows for the outcome to be not only the one benefit from the one who maybe have been offended, but the person who is offending. So in other words, it becomes residual for all, not just one.
Okay. Mrs. Black, what might be your approach when wanting to speak with the son or the daughter?
I would use the time as teachable moments. There's times you should be able to maybe role play ways in which they can resolve the situations. Teach them opportunities of ways they can go to, like a teacher if it's going on at school. Teach them not to be afraid to speak up. I think the approach has to be, again, one of empathy. Not sympathy, but empathy. And also it has to be one of trying to come to a resolution.
So we sometimes hear about people who commit suicide because of bullying. What would you say to parents who are concerned that their child may actually be considering something like that because of bullying?
You have to watch your children very closely. I'm a teacher by trade, and I can give an example that I had this year. A little boy, his attitude just changed. I noticed it. His mother had noticed it too, but because I was the teacher, I called the mother. And so we had a conversation about it, and we were able to refer him to a counselor, refer him to outside help, because of some of the things that he was saying, some of the ways in which his attitude had changed, the depression that we could see was going on. He wasn't doing his homework. He just changed as a child. And it's important as a parent to be able to see and know your children. You can't know them when they're stuck in their room all the time. You have to have some interaction time with your children, and you have to spend that time purposefully getting to know how your child is really acting. Because if you don't see the changes, you can miss them.
So can you briefly discuss how underlying mental illness, such as depression, might be exacerbated by bullying, and what parents can do in these types of situations? So, for example, if a student has some symptoms of depression and also experiencing some form of bullying, what can the parents do?
You have to determine, is the depression first or is the bullying first? And so if it's the bullying that's causing the depression, then you need to resolve that. If it's the depression that's allowing the bullying, then you have to resolve that and take the necessary help for that. But again, it's important to be able to seek out help. Don't try to resolve it yourself, especially in a situation when it's a potential for a child trying to take their life. Children don't realize that taking your life is permanent. They think that it sounds like something, they'll make pacts at school, but they don't realize it's permanent. And so it's important for us to be able to have a good handle as a parent on really knowing which one is first. It's like the chicken and the egg. You have to know which one is causing the other one. And if you've seen signs of depression and that depression is being exacerbated by the bullying, then you need to deal with the depression first.
That makes sense. Do you recommend any online resources that parents can use to better educate themselves about bullying?
Now that it's come to the forefront with even the president's wife has been going in, they have a website. The government has a website. It's called stopbullyinggov.gov. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of stories, ways in which teachers can help in the classroom, ways in which you can help as a coach. There's a lot of different things on there, and also parents as well. There's other ones, thebullyexpert.com. That one has resources for kids and parents that gives real life situations and real life instances and how to resolve those. Urgentcarekids.com. It identifies what really bullying is, because bullying is not just me and my friend having a fight and tomorrow we're the best friends again. It's really something that's, the definition itself is a person is being exposed repeatedly over time. So it's not a one-day incident. It's something that continues to go on. It can happen with one child, it can happen with more than one child, but it can happen you have to understand what bullying really is. It's not just the friends having an argument and the next day they're okay again. So you have to, it's repeated over time. And so understanding that a lot of kids, as you notice it, as it's going on over time, they'll get more and more withdrawn. And so that's how you'll know that it has been something that's been going on over time as well. They're not friends again with that friend, or they're coming home and they don't want to talk to them, or they want to go straight to their room. So there's a lot of things that you'll see with that. There's something called love and logic parenting. Basically what that is it's talking about ways in which you can improve your child's self-esteem, ways in which you can improve their reactions, because really bullying starts when you're about 2 years old. And as a child, if you don't start dealing with it when they're little and they're pushing down their friends then, or they're snatching stuff from their classmate, it just escalates over time. And so it's important that you start addressing those things even as little as 2. And so it's important that you have to look at your home life too. How do you handle situations? How are you handling arguments? How are you dealing with your relationship with your spouse? How are you modeling right behavior? Because many children, they act out because they get bullied at home by their parents. And so you have to look at where is those, what am I doing? And I might be contributing to it as a parent. It's time for me to be reflective as well and understand, is there something that I'm doing that might be causing my child to act out on another child? And so interpersonal relationships, conflict resolution, those things start when the kids are little. And you have to teach them the way to be good, because we all learn sin is within all of us. And so all of us have that sin nature. And so we have to learn how to tame it.
I think one of the other things that we have to be considerate of, a lot of times we look for easy solutions. And when we look at things that are online, it can kind of disengage us to some extent. And we might be able to find potentially something that might be identified in a pigeonhole, but if it's not in the pigeonhole, how do we deal with that? And one of the challenges that we face as people, not only with children, but as adults, we tend to not want to always recognize or acknowledge the things that we have contributed when we see them, see our behavior, see ourselves in someone else. And so therefore it becomes a little bit more graduated in order for the child to be able to be benefited by what has taken place. And so therefore you have to be able to have a congruent coming together, not only of the resource that's being used, but there's change that has to come from the home in terms of adults, and then there has to be a support mechanism that comes to helping children or a child to be able to overcome, to be able to reassimilate themselves in an environment. It's not something that, well, oh, I've got a headache today and I take an aspirin and tomorrow morning I get up and feel better. It's kind of like, well, you know, I can have a good day, but tomorrow it might not be so good. And so therefore we have to be able to generate the kind of life skills that are not only in parents or in children, but more so in parents, because parents have to be the support mechanism for their children. And so it's a real, it takes a great commitment. Let's just put it that way. People have to be committed, and there has to be support, not only internally within the home, but in the school where children are going to school at.
And raising a child with good self-esteem is hard, especially in this day and time. And so understanding the importance of building that self-esteem even as a young child, understanding they are worthy, they are, you know, they are loved, that it doesn't matter what someone says. I know when we were growing up, it was sticks or stones may break my bones, you know, but words do hurt. But you have to have your own personal value, your own self-worth, that allow those things not to affect you. And that comes from the parents.
Okay, and one final question. What about families who say, we spoke to the school, we spoke to the police, nothing's happening, the bullying still continues? What suggestions do you have for parents who feel like they're experiencing roadblocks?
The best thing to do is to get the child removed from the situation. If that means potentially moving them out of that school into another school, into a safer place, especially if it's a physical issue. So you have to protect your child. That's the biggest thing. And understanding what that means is basically on a case-by-case basis. But you have to love your child enough to fight for them too.
Absolutely.
Can I say one other thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, it's difficult for us as people to ascertain what is normal. And so therefore, I think it goes back to what Adrienne said about knowing your child. It's akin to even in this situation where things are being exasperated and you move them from one environment and place them in another environment, we don't want to be able to have children who are being conditioned. What has to take place is that children have to become transformed by those scenarios. In other words, even though it's negative, we want to be able to have positive outcomes that come from that. And so therefore, it's kind of like teaching your child to move from a tricycle to riding a bicycle with training wheels. At some point in time, the child is going to ride without training wheels. At some point in time, the child is going to have to learn how to put on brakes and to use foot pedals and to be able to steer their bicycles to go whatever direction that they're going. And so therefore we have to not only rely upon other people, there is a continuous engagement that we have to have as parents within our homes to continually to impart and to share until we can identify that someone has overcome this difficulty. And that takes commitment, that takes patience, because a lot of times what we expect does not always come to pass in a time that we determine to be reasonable. And so what becomes important is that we have to allow for the child to come to him or herself and identify that, Mom, you know, I feel better now. I think I can handle this thing. And I think that also, finally, as being people of faith, I think it's important that we have to be able to intercede for our children on our knees at night, in the morning, saying encouraging words. We're not trying to isolate them into a place of weakness. We want them to be able to come to a place of strength so that they can become, as we said, who they're capable of becoming and be something great. And the only way that they can be great is to be able to identify and do something about those sometimes inherent weaknesses, and be positive about it.
Before y'all head out today, do y'all have any words of encouragement or any last minute advice for parents and families who have children who are victims of bullying?
My take home would be close to your kids. Have a true relationship, not friends, but where they understand that you're there for their back. You've got their back. And but you also have to be able to train them up in a way that they should go. You need to be able to give them scripture that they can hold on to. You need to teach them how to pray. You need to teach them the basic foundational things that will help them through those tough times, because we all go through them. Whether they're children, to them that's insurmountable, but for us sometimes they're just little road bumps. And let them know that everything's not a big mountain. It can be speed bumps too, and just understand how to navigate over them.
Mr. Black?
I think that the important thing for parents is not to lose hope.
Right.
I think that a lot of times they may not be able to control the outcome, but they certainly can control what they contribute. That is positive, that is constructive, and that's consistent. I think it's important that that we not allow for our children, even though they are experiencing these things, not to create further handicap. I think it's important that they understand that right is right and wrong is wrong. Because I have been mistreated doesn't excuse me to do something else that's out of the norm or unexpected.
Okay. And again, I thank y'all for coming. I thank y'all for shedding a light on such a touchy yet important topic. Sure. Again, we have Mr. and Mrs. Micheal Black of Self Ministries based out of Houston. Until next time.